Good evening, everyone. Ooh, that's loud. It is 6:30. I'm now calling to order the February 14th, 2023 meeting of Lancaster City Council. A few reminders for all of us right at the top of the meeting. This is a good opportunity to silence your devices if you haven't done so already. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed, so you may be recorded being here in the room with us. If you're making public comment at any point during the evening, please do so from the podium, speaking into the microphone so that you can be heard by everyone in the room and on the recording, and begin your comments with your name and your block of residence for the meeting record. Now, for those who are willing and able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Harris, would you please call the roll of members?
Yes, Madam President. Mr. Ahmed.
Here.
Mr. Arroyo.
Here.
Mr. Calise.
Here.
Ms. Gregg.
Here.
Ms. Diaz. Ms. Walsh.
Here.
And President Beke.
Here. We begin this evening with the approval of the minutes for the January 24th, February 1st, and February 6th meetings of council.
Motion to approve? Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any council comments on our meeting minutes? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed.
Aye.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Calise.
Aye.
Ms. Gregg.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz. Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Beke.
Aye. We move to proclamations, honors, awards, and resolutions of recognition. Mr. Harris, do we have any of those this evening?
We do, Madam President. Excuse me. We have Council Resolution Number 6, 2023.
Thank you very much. This is a resolution recognizing Black History Month and is introduced by our Council Vice President, Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. It is definitely my honor to read this resolution into its full validity. And without further ado, let me read this and then we'll get on. This is a resolution of the City Council of Lancaster designating February 2023 as Black History Month in the City of Lancaster and recognizing resistance to injustice by African Americans throughout Lancaster's history. This, bear with me, the resolution is quite lengthy, and I would like to read the whole thing because it really doesn't do it justice to read part of it. Whereas since 1976, February has been recognized in the United States as Black History Month, and national attention has been focused on the history of African Americans, the civil rights movement, and efforts to advance the place of African Americans in society. And whereas the theme of the 2023 national recognition of Black History Month is Black resistance, and whereas Lancaster has been the scene of Black resistance from the days of the Underground Railroad before the Civil War, during the civil rights protests of the mid-20th century to Black Lives Matter protest of recent years. And whereas William Whipper and Stephen Smith, African-American business owners in nearby Columbia, ferried runaway slaves through Lancaster in special freight railroad cars, equipped with hidden compartments in the 1840s and 1850s. And clandestine Underground Railroad conductors led fugitives to and from hiding places in Lancaster. And whereas members of the Lancaster's Black community and their white allies persisted in organizing to resist unfair practices in housing, education, employment, including Abraham Polite, Marianne Gibbons Brubaker, Laura Carter, who organized the Lancaster branch of the NAACP in 1923. All those who served as presidents of the NAACP during the important years of the resistance in 1960, including the Reverend Philip Aku, Robert A. Cooper, Ashley S. Dudley Jr., the Reverend Alexander L. Stevens, Kenneth Boast, and the Reverend Ernest Christian and Kenneth H. Abernathy. Betty Tompkins, Publicity Secretary for the NAACP, Lancaster, and Ruby Cook Bohe Payne, who served for nearly 30 years as leader of the Crispus Attucks Center. And whereas Black leaders in academia both created and documented Black history in Lancaster, including Fred Reed, the first Black male teacher in the school district of Lancaster. Hazel I. Jackson, who held her own quiet protests, spending Friday afternoons in the 1950s outside the office of the school district of Lancaster's superintendent before being hired as the district's first Black female teacher in 1961. Dr. Rita Smith Waddell, who founded the African American Studies program at the Black Cultural Celebration at Millersville University, and Dr. Leroy Hopkins, who through his research, lectures, and articles in the Journal of the Lancaster County Historical Society, has elevated the Black history of Lancaster. The schools in Lancaster were later renamed in honor of Hazel I. Jackson and Dr. Rita Smith Waddell. And whereas Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church, founded in 1817 and incorporated in 1848, and other religious congregations of predominantly Black members have provided spiritual, social, and civic support for Lancastrians, and before the Civil War, to Black freedom seekers traveling through Lancaster under the protection of the Underground Railroad network. And whereas in Lancaster, in one of Lancaster's first known civil rights era protests, Black and white youth staged a lunch counter sit-in at the Old Brunswick Hotel in 1937. And whereas in the summer of 1963, the Lancaster branch of the National Association of Advancement for Colored People organized protests of downtown Lancaster department stores over discriminatory hiring practices because Black employees at those stores were relegated to jobs as janitors and elevator operators. Whereas that same summer, the NAACP members were joined by members of the local churches in marching outside the Rocky Springs pool, which the park owner refused to desegregate even after a court ruling. And whereas Henry Norwood Barney Ewell, national and international champion in track events and winner of 1 gold medal and 2 silver medals in the 1948 Olympics, was recognized by the city of Lancaster in naming of Ewell Plaza. Whereas Black Lives Matter protests held loud public protests in Lancaster following the death of George Floyd at the hands of the Minneapolis police officer in 2020, and whereas Lancaster has long been a place of welcome for those seeking religious liberties, as it has sought to live up to the principle of liberty for all. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of Lancaster that during this Black History Month and every month, Lancaster City Council calls on all Lancastrians to respect and honor the sacrifice of those who have struggled for the rights of African Americans to justice and equality.
Thank you very much, Councilor Craig. I appreciate you reading that into the record.
Thank you. And now, I would like to ask Cheryl if she would have a few comments, and then I'll come down there with you.
Thank you so much. Just listening to the resolution certainly was uplifting to me, because I knew so many of the people that you spoke about there. But this evening, unfortunately, Blanding Watson, president of the NAACP, was not able to be here. So as one of the vice presidents, I was asked to come and make his comments. So good evening. I am Cheryl Holland Jones. And on behalf of the NAACP Lancaster branch, let me say thank you to you and the City Council for the resolution in honor of Black History Month for February 2023. History is very important to NAACP Lancaster, especially this year. In 2023, the NAACP Lancaster marks 100 years since its founding in 1923. Leaders of the Black community, including Abraham Polite, Laura Carter, and the first branch presidents, were joined by progressive white allies such as longtime U.S. Congressman W.W. Grice and his family, and Marianna Gibbons Brubaker, whose parents and grandparents assisted freedom seekers on the Underground Railroad, applied to the National NAACP Office for the first charter. The strength of the NAACP has risen and fallen over the 100 years in the face of war, economic depression, leadership changes, but the members have always persisted and reinvigorated the branch. The officers and members of the NAACP through the years have worked with your predecessors in the mayor's office and on council to push Lancaster toward being the best community it can be for all of us. It says in the resolution designating Black History Month that Lancaster is a place of welcome. Not everyone yet fully agrees, and the NAACP has in its DNA to push and push until we all agree that we are living up to the principles of liberty and justice for all. Let us all agree, though, that now that we are committed to this effort to make Lancaster the welcoming, inclusive community that it is, and more importantly, can become, in this effort we agree and we disagree, we challenge, we learn, we grow. We at the NAACP resist when we see what appears to be overreaching or unjust applications of power. Our work and our activism is part of Lancaster County's history, as it is the work and activism of all civic and social justice groups in this city. We are making this history together. When the NAACP resists, our efforts are to help clarify a more meaningful way forward. And the NAACP believes that Black history is deeply connected to and is an integral part of the great story of the history of the United States. Its accomplishments, its challenges, its diversity, and its detail. Black History Month reminds us all and accept the history we all share. And the parts that we love and the parts we don't, the parts we know as well as the parts that we find hard to know. During Black History Month, we celebrate these efforts as together we make history. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'll hear a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you, Councilor Craig. At this time, I'll open it up for any comments to members of council. And comments from the public. Hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Mann.
Aye.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. Thank you very much. Actually, would like to applaud that. Cheryl, Councilor Craig is bringing down 2 copies of the resolution for the NAACP Lancaster branch. And we can take a photo if you'd like. They're gonna Thank you so much again, Cheryl. And Councilor Craig. This time we'll move into our first public comment period reserved for residents who have called ahead to request the opportunity to address City Council. Duration of comments is limited to no longer than 3 minutes, and speakers are to begin with their name and block of residence. Mr. Harris, are there any public comment speakers this evening?
Yes, there are, Madam President. First, we have Susie Gomez.
Ms. Gomez? I'm not seeing her in the room as of yet. If she happens to be here during our second public comment period, I will allow her to come up at that time. Were there any other public comments, Mr. Harris?
There are not, Madam President.
Thank you very much. We then move to reports requested by council. Were there any reports requested by council?
There are not, Madam President.
Thank you. And that takes us to reports of committees of the council meetings held on February 6, 2023. We begin with Public Safety and Councilor Diaz.
The Safety Committee met last Monday, and we discussed ordinance Administration 05-2023, which is the updating the fire prevention code, and we can bring that up at our legislative agenda. We also discussed Administration Resolution 13-2023, amending the civil service appointment rule for the fire department. And that's all we have at this time.
Thank you, Councilor Diaz. The Public Works Committee, Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Council President. The Public Works Committee did meet. In my absence, I'd like to thank my co-chairs for taking the lead on that last meeting. Two resolutions were discussed. Number 05-2023, authorizing an extension for a deadline for use of grant funds, which will be discussed later in the agenda, and the second resolution, number 10-2023, which is authorizing a grant application for the renovation of the city's welcoming center, which will also be discussed later in the agenda. And that concludes the meeting.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh. The Economic Development Committee, Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. The Economic Development Committee did meet during the last committee session. We discussed 3 items on the agenda. Bill number 3, 2023, authorizing the renewal of the Downtown Investment District Plan. Bill number 4, 2023, authorizing the amendment to the Downtown Investment District Authority Articles of Incorporation. Both of those items will be on the agenda later this evening for first reading. And we also discussed the Community Facilities RFP update for the American Rescue Plan funds. I discussed that the RFP deadline had closed, and we are currently in the review period for those proposals. That concludes my report, Council President.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. The Finance Committee, Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Council President. The Finance Committee did meet, and we discussed Resolution Number 7, 2023, exonerating 2022 water and sewer charges for city-owned and related properties, which we will be discussing further in the legislative agenda, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Community Planning Committee, Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. Community Planning did meet for the committee meeting. On the 6th, we had 4 items on the agenda. First being Administration Resolution Number 8, authorizing a loan from the Enterprise Zone Loan Fund to the Redevelopment Authority of Lancaster City. Resolution Number 11, projection easements for 347 North Queen Street LLC project. And we had 2 Historical Commission recommendations, and they will all come up on the legislative agenda in just a little while.
Thank you, Councilor Craig. The Personnel Committee, Councilor Calixte.
Thank you, Madam President. The Personnel Committee did meet on February 6th and reviewed the nominations for reappointment to the Lancaster Higher Education Authority and for appointment to the Fire Code Board of Appeals. That concludes my report, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Calixte. We then move into our legislative agenda for this evening. The first item are nominations for appointment.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I make the motion, I would ask the nominees if they are here to stand up in order to be recognized. Kendra Saunders.
Kendra's not here this evening.
Yeah, and Lloyd Henry. Dennis Park, Jean Duncan, Kenneth Barton. Okay, now I'll make a motion to appoint or reappoint the following individuals.
Would you like to read out the full positions
The full-
into the record?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Kendra Sanders for reappointment to the Lancaster Higher Education Authority for a term from January 1st, 2023 to January 1st, 2028. Lloyd Henry for reappointment to the Fire Code Board of Appeals for a term July 10th, 2022 to July 10th, 2025. And Dennis Park for appointment to the Fire Code Board of Appeals for a term from January 10, 2023 to July 10, 2025. Jean Duncan to the Fire Code Board of Appeals for a term from January 10, 2023 to July 10, 2025. And Kenneth Barton to the Fire Code Board of Appeals for a term from January 10, 2023 to July 10, 2025.
I'll return to your second,
motion?
Counselor Diaz. Thank you very much. We have a motion on the second for our appointments. Any counselor comments on the appointments? Comments from the public? Good evening, Mr.
Good evening.
Acosta-Velez.
My name is Ivan Acosta-Velez. I live at 804 Highland Avenue. My question that I've asked lots of times, how are people in the city going to know these people? Everybody in the city doesn't have internet to look at when you put them on the internet. So what are you doing for people to recognize? Because you have a meeting with them over there and they're not recorded, are they?
Not
that the
every
people
public
can see
meeting
them,
is yet
they're not
recorded.
Okay.
Many
So-
of them are, but not all are. You are
Yeah,
correct.
I'm correct.
Mhm.
So I'm asking again, why can't these people come up so we can see who they are? Okay? You guys know them, but who needs to know them is the city of Lancaster. Okay? And we continue to play who's on first and who's on second. And that has been asked not by me, by a lot of other people. Okay? So it would be as a courtesy of you guys that these people come, okay? And then people get to see them. And another question added to that, in my 3 minutes in order.
No, you're
okay?
fine.
Okay, what's happening with this late, that we are appointing them late, somewhere in January, some last year?
I'm not sure if I understand your question, but I don't know if it's
Okay, I'll
related to
explain my
the
question.
item.
You're putting
On-
some in January 10th of this year, and you're voting for them in February.
Maybe I missed what you had asked. I
Okay, here's
apologize.
my question.
Just repeat that for me. Thank you.
Why are we nominating them after the date and not before the date so it's covered?
Oh, you mean the dates of appointments? I understand. So what happens, and I can speak from experience of previously serving on one of these boards, commissions, and authorities, is that many of them meet on an as-needed basis. So their appointments run out, but they don't necessarily submit their reappointment paperwork until it's time for them to meet again. It's just a function of having volunteers from the community. They may not even realize their appointment's about to run out. So luckily, we have Mr. Harris that helps keep all of that on schedule as much as possible.
Okay, so I mean, those are the things. You know, we're talking about that people can see us. Bring those people in, okay? Because some of them are, as you're saying, they've been on the board for a while, and I've been here for a long time, and some of them I don't know. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments on the appointments? Hearing none. Mr. Harris?
Mr. Met?
Aye.
Mr. Arroyo?
Aye.
Mr. Cleese?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Ms. Walsh?
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. We then move to item B, items from the Heritage Conservation District. Mr. Harris?
Yes, Madam President. Excuse me. Considering the following applications and recommendations from the Historical Commission for improvements to properties in the Heritage Conservation District. A Mobley Commercial LLC, owner of 211 West James Street, proposes demolition of a modern commercial building to allow new construction at the site. A Mobley Commercial LLC, owner of 227 West James Street, proposes demolition of the rear wings of a residential building at 227 West James Street. A Mobley Commercial LLC, owner of 211 West James Street, proposes construction of a new one-story commercial delicatessen building at 211 West James Street at the corner of Harrisburg Avenue and North Water Street. Gray House Property Holdings LLC, owner of 422 Ruby Street, proposes demolition of a one-story cement block commercial building to allow new construction at the site. And Gray House Property Holdings LLC, owner of 422 Ruby Street, proposes construction of a new one-story mixed-use commercial building. And all of these applications were recommended for approval by the Historical Commission.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. I'll hear a motion on one or all of these items.
Motion to approve both.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor for the approval of the items. Council comments on the approvals.
Council President,
Councilor Walsh.
are any of these property owners present this evening?
That's a great question. We did have some representatives at the committee meeting. If any of the project managers or property owners or applicants are here this evening, if you could come on up to the podium.
My name is Drew Hohenwarter. I live on the 300 block of Walnut Street, and I'm one of the architects for the 422 Ruby Street project.
Yep, Kyle Solak, Director of Architecture for Toner Group, project architect for the project 422 Ruby Street.
Terrific.
Can you please use the microphone? Thank you.
Eric Endress, RLPS Architects, representing the owner for Immobile Commerciale.
Thank you.
And Justin Harkler, project designer with RLPS for Immobile Commerciale.
Thank you very much.
Just so I'm clear, all architects or supportive services, no owners present? Correct. Okay, so I had questions directed at the owners, but thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Walsh, did you want to ask your question in general? I don't know if we have staff that might be able to answer the question that were present at the meetings.
Sure, I guess,
to you.
Starting or demolishing buildings, and I understand one of them is building a delicatessen, and the other one is proposing new one-story mixed-use commercial buildings. I just had a question for the delicatessen is, why have you chosen that particular location in the city? Are they currently city residents? What sort of impact do they hope to have in the neighborhoods that they are now doing business within? And I suppose for the second Gray House Properties Holding LLC with the one-story mixed-use commercial buildings, just wondering if there's a residential component to that, or if it is strictly commercial. And if it's just commercial, what type of businesses are they anticipating or are they hoping to attract within the project?
I can speak to one part of one of your questions from what was discussed at our committee meetings on the 6th, and then if any other staff have additional answers, I will let them do that. For the Gray House Properties items, the 422 Ruby Street, the one-story cement block commercial building that's there now is at least partially unusable. In the state that it's in, it houses a garage in at least part of the building now. And so it's commercial use already, and it would propose full use of the same building footprint for commercial use.
Yeah, mixed use commercial.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, if I may, Council President, that
Mayor Sracci.
these are great questions, Councilor Walsh, and typically in the process of the Heritage Conservation District and the review by the Historical Commission, the issue is more about the historic nature of the building and to allow the demolition. And so those questions generally are not discussed in the context of this. And I'll also just say that the delicatessen is affiliated with Lombardo's Restaurant, which is next door.
Thank you. Any comments from the public on the approvals? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Med.
Aye.
Mr. Royo.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
President Baker.
Aye. We then move to item C on our agenda. These are ordinances for first reading. Again, there's no votes on these items. These are first readings. They will be discussed. Bill number 3, Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, approving the plan of administrative services of the Lancaster Downtown Investment District Authority, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance shall take effect as provided by Pennsylvania law.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. Councilor Arroyo, anything to add on this one?
Thank you, Council President. This bill is regarding the Downtown Investment District Plan that's up for renewal. David Achel, the Executive Director of the Downtown Investment District Authority, spoke on behalf of the plan. A few highlights in this plan include the expansion of the boundaries, increase in service hours throughout the district, and a millage increase over the next 5 years that will reach 2.45 mils in 2028. I see that Mr. Achel is in the audience. I invite you to the podium if there's anything additional that you would like to add.
Good evening. I'm Dave Achel, Executive Director of Lancaster Downtown Investment District. And first of all, I just want to say, thank you very much for allowing us to be here. And everything you pointed out was things we had discussed at the committee meeting. And if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for being here. Take council comments at this time.
Council President, if I may.
Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr. Achel. I just had one question. With the expansion of the boundaries, are we also going to expand the downtown investment sanitation workers who are working in the downtown area? Will they also be spread out to these new areas, specifically the ones on West King?
Yes, they will be. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The gentleman you see in the blue shirts picking up trash, wiping down, taking care of graffiti, they will all be included into the expansion areas we're looking at. Yes.
So is that going to require us to expand that staff, or is it going to be the same staff working in these new areas?
We will be expanding staff to cover those additional areas, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, this is a first read tonight. Any comments from the public? Mr.
My
Costa.
question, my name is Ivan Acosta Velez, I live at 804. I was involved in the beginning of this project. When we're expanding it, how much, or if you don't have the information, I would like to have the information, how many of this is going to affect homeowners? And I mean homeowners that live it, not homeowners that are in Europe, homeowners that are living that property. Because I know this means that their taxes are going to go up, correct?
For the property owner.
Yes, but that's what I want to know. How many of those homes that we're expanding this area is going to affect the homeowners, the people that live there, the people that are citizens? Do you have that information?
Off the top of my head, I believe there are a total of about 60 properties that will be affected by the expansion. The property owners, whether they are owner occupied or apartment units, the property owner themselves will be required to pay the assessment the DIT imposes on those property owners. As was pointed out, the increase from where we are right now to 2025 will be, 2028 will be less than 1% of an increase from what it is today. And that 0.88% increase is what we reduced the millage rate back when the county did the property reassessments in 2017. So over the course of the 5 years of this plan, we'll actually be taking it back up to where it was previously.
Could I ask a follow-up, and it may be related to what you're asking? Can you talk a little bit about how the decision was made to expand and who was involved in that decision?
Yes, ma'am. We had a lot of inquiries from people who were beyond our boundaries, the areas that we were looking at for expansion, that they want to know how they could be part of the DID because they appreciated the services we provide with our clean and safe teams, as well as our outreach worker. So we met with them, a lot of those property owners personally. Every single one of those property owners was sent a letter, a notice of a public hearing. They were given 30 days notice by mail that public hearing was held on December the 5th, and they were more than welcome to attend and ask any questions at that time.
Thank you. Mr. Acosta-Velez, please. Yeah.
My 3 minutes in a row. Question for you. Hold on. You're saying 1%, but right now, how much are the people that are in that district are paying? because that includes also the 8% that we're raising taxes. 1% will make it 9, but what are they paying? Because if they're paying 3%, then new people are gonna pay more than 1%. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
My question?
Yes, I know exactly what your question is. So before we reduced the millage rate back in 2018, the assessment rate was 2.45%. We reduced it in 2018 because of the county's reassessment to 1.57% of the property's assessed value. So over the course of the next 5 years of this plan, we will be increasing that back up to the 2.45%. So less than 1%, 0.88% over 5 years.
Okay, so it's, with the 8%, the 1% you're raising, and the other percent that's running around, you're talking about 10% in this area, right? The DI.
I can't.
No, I'm not asking you to control. I'm asking to ask, the question to you. That'll be
Council
correct.
President,
Okay.
if I may.
Okay.
Just
Yes.
for a point of clarification, the 1% increase is on the millage rate over time, so that is not the same as increasing property taxes that were an increase of 8% to 9%.
And this is in the time frame of until 2028.
That's correct.
Thank you. Yep.
But my question was that we're saying 1%, but you're talking about these people are joining there, it's gonna be an additional tax that Ruby that lives in that area is already paying, correct? That was my question.
Mr. Acho, if you could remind us of the decrease that happened in the millage rate, and I forget which year exactly, and this is actually bringing it back to that original rate that it was charged a few years ago?
That's correct. The millage rate we had prior to the county's reassessment was 2.45%. That millage rate was probably in effect for about 4 years. When the county did the reassessment, we looked at the numbers very closely. We wanted to be good stewards to our property owners because property values obviously increased. Pardon me. The average within the downtown investment district properties increased anywhere between 15 and 25% in value at that time. So we looked at those numbers very closely and we reduced our numbers to 1.57 to remain revenue neutral. And of course, providing the service we do with our clean and safe programs, we've also increased their wages over this time to give them a livable wage. So over the course of the next 5 years, we're only bringing that back up to where it had been in 2017.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess Mr. Arroyo can answer this question for me. How many of these people are, that they don't have apartments there? They're living in a single home? Do you have that number? Or can you reach that number for me? The people that you're adding to, the citizens of this city that you're adding this district to, how many of them are just Mrs. Yola, whatever, that is living, on, do you have that number, or where can I get that number? And don't send me to the internet. Can you get someone to get me those numbers? Okay?
Mr. Acho, I'm not sure if you know off the top of your head how many of those properties in that district are actual residential units versus commercial units?
Off the top of my head, I want to say about 90% of those are commercial properties, probably even higher than that. The number of owner occupied, I want to say it's probably like 2 people, 2 households. The rest of them are rental properties or rental and commercial combined.
Thank you.
I want to see that in writing, really, because I think there's more than just 2 people.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, wait, one second.
There's more than 2 people. And I know that for a fact.
If you want to have to give my business card, please get in touch with me.
No, I would like, I just want basically the number so we know what we're doing. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Acosta-Velez. Councilor Cleeks, you have a question.
Yes, thank you. And what will be the impact of the new renewal of the plan on the community, and how will you measure its success?
Our success, we always calculate what our ambassadors are doing. We take stats weekly and monthly. Over the past year, our clean team has removed probably 54 tons of trash and leaves from our sidewalks in downtown. That's just the sidewalks. That does not count the trash that was removed by, Public Works from the trash cans that are downtown. So on top of that, we're making business contacts, we're assisting residents, we're assisting visitors with directions. And of course, our outreach worker is a big component of being downtown, addressing the needs of our community that are in needs of services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President.
Counselor Walsh.
Mr. Angel, I just have a quick question, and you may have reviewed this during the committee, but in the line item, I'm looking at your draft budget for 23 to 28. There's a line item in under revenue for contracted services, and for 22, 23, it's 9,200, and then the following year, it jumps to $120,000. Can you explain to me what the contracted services are and why that big jump occurs?
A lot of that, we have contracts with a couple of small businesses in downtown, and a big portion of that is our dedicated Clean Team service member to Binns Park and Ewell Plaza. We have a contract with the city for. So that's part of that funding line item you're looking at. The cost to us is part of that.
And are they employees of yours, or are they contract?
We contract with an organization that provides that service for us.
Okay, and off the top of your head, do you know how many folks that is employing that program?
We have, just in the downtown investment district, we probably have about 12 employees.
Thank you.
Full and part-time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
One more question.
Counselor Kleist.
And who is responsible for overseeing? Oh, sorry. Who is responsible for overseeing, the process, the application of the plan?
That would be myself and our board of directors.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Talk about the plan itself?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Board of directors and myself oversee that plan that's proposed to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public on the Downtown Improvement District Plan?
A follow-up, and I still have 2 seconds.
You have about
Question
15.
is- Okay, my question to you, of those people that you're contracting to subcontract or subcontractor, how many live in the city that are city residents? They might come to the city, that's okay, but how many do live here?
Of the ones that work on our Clean Team and Ambassador program, all of those employees live within the city.
Thank you very much. All right. As a reminder, this is a first reading, so the renewal of the Downtown Improvement District Plan will be on the agenda at our meeting on the 28th. Next item for first reading this evening, Administrative Bill Number 4. Mr. Harris.
Yes, Madam President. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, approving and adopting Articles of Amendment to the Articles of Incorporation of the Lancaster Downtown Investment District Authority, and directing and authorizing the taking of all related necessary and appropriate action.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. This bill makes a minor change to the Articles of Incorporation, changing the number of board members that may be seated on the authority from 9 to 11 members to allow up to 17 members. And this is an opportunity to expand the Board of Directors and allow more opportunity for different residents to participate.
Thank you very much. Any council comments on the bill?
Council President, if I may.
Councilor Ahmed.
Mr. Adrian, I was just, we spoke about this in the first committee meeting, but what are we doing to promote diversity on the board and include some of the minority downtown business owners?
Yes, very great question. Our board of directors does the first outreach to our community, and that is very important to us, our diverse community, and we want to make sure that that diverse community is represented as part of this board. So when our board of directors comes forth with a few names that they've talked to some people, we then present those names to the mayor and to council for approval to be on our board.
Thank you, sir. And are these only business owners, or is there a resident component as well?
There's a resident component, yes. We have people on our board now that are residents of the district. They are business owners of the district and property owners.
Thank you, sir. That concludes my questions, Council President.
Thank you.
Council
Councilor
President.
Walsh.
Thank you. Quick question, even though you're expanding up to 17, do you intend to start recruiting to that number right away? Do you think that you'll start working up from the number, but you're at 11 now, 9 to 11?
We have 11 right now, and our intentions are that we will have room to expand, we wouldn't want to do 17 right away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from the public on the bill? Mr. Acosta-Velez.
All right. You say diversity. What diversity do you have in that? What's sitting on that board right now?
We have a lot of our board members are white females who own properties, own businesses within the downtown investment district. We have a black gentleman who is a business owner, but also lives within the city limits. And we also have a pastor of a church within the city.
Thank you. All right, hearing no further comments on the item, again, this is a first read. This will be on our agenda on the 28th. Mr. Harris, I just have a clerical question. Were these bills previously numbered differently, and should these appear?
No, they were numbered in this order previously.
Okay, just to be clear, bill number 3 is the plan,
Yes,
and number 4 is the Articles of Incorporation. Okay.
correct.
Thank you. All right, then we move to Administration Bill number 5, adopting, I'm sorry, Mr. Harris. Keep reading.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, providing for the amending and restating of Chapter 142, Fire Prevention Code, to prescribe effective standards and minimum requirements to improve public safety by promoting the control of fire hazards, regulating the installation, use, and maintenance of equipment, regulating the use of structures, premises, and open areas, providing for the abatement of fire hazards, establishing the responsibilities and procedures for code enforcement, and setting forth the standards for compliance and achievement of these objectives, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance shall take effect in accordance with the laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Again, this is a first read. Councilor Diaz.
I think the clerk was very clear, but I would like our chief, if he can come up and just give us a little bit more context to it.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening. So we're adopting the 2018 International Fire Code, just bringing it up from the 2015. And then we'll use some of the appendices that were in the 15, we're taking out of the 18. And some of the examples of things that were added were like food truck enforcement and some of the fire code that has to deal with that.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Thank you. Council comments on the bill?
I have a question.
Councilor
President,
Calixte.
please, if I may. How will the amended rules and regulations impact the hiring and appointment process for the firefighters?
I'm sorry.
How will the amended rules and regulations affect the hiring process of firefighters?
I think that is later in the agenda. This is for the International Fire Code. This isn't for the civil service testing.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
There will be another item on that later in the agenda.
Okay.
Comments from the public? Hearing none, we thank you, Chief. And again, this will come up again at our February 28th meeting. We move then to resolutions. Resolution number 5, Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster extending the deadline of an automatic red light enforcement grant of $105,000 from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to be used for the upgrade of school flashers.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the resolution. Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Council President. As I understand this, we have funds in hand from the Department of Transportation's Automated Red Light Enforcement Grant Program that the work is 90% complete, and what this extension would allow us to do would be to move the deadline to April 15th to complete the remainder of the work, which it appears from the notes that Mr. Campbell, Director Campbell thinks would be completed by the end of March.
Thank you very much. Are there any council comments on the resolution? And comments from the public? Director Campbell, you wanted to say a few words. Good evening.
Good evening. I wanted to answer a question that had come up at the committee meeting.
Thank you very much for remembering that.
There was a question about whether this included lights around Washington Elementary School. And yes, there are 3 lights around Washington Elementary, one in the 600 block of South End and 2 on Chesapeake. This is replacing 12 ARLE fixtures that are 37 years old or older. And yes, to your point, to your question before, it does include those lights in question.
And the one on
Ms.
the
Byrd.
100 block of South End Street, is that addressed?
To be perfectly honest, I'm not sure if the one at 300 block, which is around Jackson, I'm not sure if that one is included. I apologize.
That's fine. But I just want to make a comment to council and challenge you. When we're getting these grants to do the work, know where it's being done. So when we come up here and we say there's nothing being done in the southeast, that you know what we're talking about. And unless we come and address that and bring it to your attention, we would have got overlooked. And, we get tired of coming and doing that. So I'm challenging council to ask where this money's being spent. Know what lights are being done. Know what percentage, the 10% that didn't get done. We're just extending it, and that's a good thing. But I'm challenging council to know where these things are at. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Byrd. Good evening.
Good evening, Jessica Lopez, 437 East Marion Street. I'm a little new to this resolution, but is any of these lights being changed in the Chestnut and Walnut Street, that Chestnut Marshall Street area right there?
I believe Mr. Campbell may have an answer for you or a response.
I don't have the answer for you. I should have brought a list of the 12 locations in question, and I apologize for that. They are the oldest lights, ARLE lights in the system, and I did not bring that list. I can provide that list. I know that this is the resolution at this moment, but I can certainly provide that list for the public record.
I would appreciate that, and Ms. Lopez, be happy to have the clerk follow up with you with that list.
Yes, definitely, because I would just like to highlight the danger zone that street is and the amount of traffic, children traffic, that goes through that block to cross a highway. Since we call our streets highways, they're crossing a highway to get to school every morning where there's no crossing guards, where there's no signage that children are crossing, and where there, in some places, are no lights. So it's like, are we paying attention to that main strip where, not just in the southeast, but a lot of the kids from the southeast are traveling to get to the high school, to get to McCaskey East, to get to Lincoln. So I would encourage that we do pay attention to that strip of road, because it's dangerous. So I appreciate the follow-up.
Repeat the intersection again for me.
Chestnut Street, coming in, you have Rite Aid, Giant, that whole strip right there, Chestnut, Marshall, and that section right there doesn't have lights, they don't have crossing guards, and they don't have signage.
I can tell you, these items are going to be specifically the school crossing flasher lights. I can still provide you the list, but I just want to...
And if we don't have something that we're going to do about it as of yet, I suggest that we get on that, because there really is none. I had to have my kids' bus stop moved because they were busing kids from the parking lot on that street to the school all the way across town. So it's like, it's a dangerous space. So while we are speaking on lights and we're speaking on trying to make these walks a little safer, that should be an area that we're definitely paying attention to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President, if I may, I'm jumping ahead to my report to council, but I just want to say, in response to Ms. Lopez and questions from Ms. Byrd, that we did get some really fabulous news, which is that the city of Lancaster has received its largest competitive grant ever, a $12.7 million Safe Streets for All grant that's funded through the bipartisan infrastructure law, which will allow us to focus our Vision Zero efforts, increase our Vision Zero efforts tenfold, which will go to the heart of some of the things that you're talking about and the efforts that we're making to really make sure that we're improving pedestrian safety and a priority given around our schools, but also for pedestrians, but also cyclists and also drivers to really focus on that. And so you'll be hearing a lot more about that, council. And we now have the funding to realize some of the things that we have long been talking about, addressing some of the high crash intersections, some of the places where I know kids are walking to school every day. Just that turn from Chestnut Street as it sort of opens up onto like the Walnut Street bypass is incredibly dangerous, and kids are crossing there all the time. And so that is a high priority area for us. And so I just want to call that out because we actually have some money to do something with it. So that's very good news.
I think you might have stolen Director Campbell's thunder on that because he was ready to also, but that's exciting and should be celebrated. Yes. Thank you very much. Any further comments on the resolution? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed.
Aye.
Mr. Roya.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. Administrative Resolution Number 7, Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster exonerating 2022 water charges in the amount of $47,627.40 and sewer charges in the amount of $46,611.33 for city-owned or related properties at 27 locations.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Council President. Director Hopkins, I know we spoke about this in the committee meeting, but if you could just address how this is kind of a routine budgeted practice to make sure that we're not charging city properties that would essentially be double charging the city.
You just covered it right there, Councilor. So this is, as you said, we do this each year. In February, we bring this resolution to City Council. It is just, as you said, making sure essentially that we're not charging ourselves for water and sewer services. There are a few related properties like the airport and probably most importantly, the public library where we do that exoneration for their water and sewer services. And that actually goes to the city's in-kind contributions to the library that helps in their state funding calculation, in addition to the direct cash contribution that the city makes to the library.
Thank you, Director. And this is already budgeted, correct? So this isn't any new line items or anything of that nature?
Correct. We don't count on the revenue coming from these properties.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Any other council comments on the resolution? Comments from the public?
We already get the number amount of we're using on this. Who's from the council, who's on the library board now?
Right now, there's not currently a member on the library board. There will be very soon. We've had some changes in council in the last few months.
Yeah, but we haven't had since before either. So how long is it gonna take?
The last member of council that was on the library board was Councilor Smith Waddell.
But he already, I spoke to him about that, and that's over a year ago. We haven't had representation there. Are we gonna look at that if we can get someone from council, that we can look at getting someone from the community? It doesn't have to be me, okay? But I'm saying we need to get, because I was on that board.
Yep.
Okay, and a lot of changes are coming through, and the city is giving them money, and we don't have representation on there.
Mhm.
So I think you should look at, since you're changing a lot of things, and you don't have someone else, then maybe you could look and put someone from the community.
It's
on there.
good timing that you said that. I'm actually personally looking into all of the boards that counselors are required to serve on and making sure that we have that, but also asking, do we need to? And can we fill those with residents? So it's an excellent question.
Because it's really, and the reason I'm asking you is because I went to the library and there's a lot of changes that are affecting our people. And when I say our people, my people, and we don't have representation there. So can you look into that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the resolution? Ms. Byrd, good evening.
Darlene Bird, I just have one question. At the meeting, I asked if we could have a copy of the list of properties that they were writing off available for us to see because we could not see what you were talking about. And I asked if they could be put up on the screen.
I believe Mr. Hopkins has a copy for you this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the reminder.
So you do listen. Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. Any other comments on the resolution? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed.
Aye.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Beke.
Aye. We move to Administration Resolution Number 8. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the use of $325,000 from the Enterprise Zone Loan Fund to loan to the Redevelopment Authority of Lancaster to acquire 502 to 506 West Walnut Street.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. In August of 2021, a condemnation notice was issued for the property at 502, 506 West Walnut Street. The Reinvestment Board issued a notice of blight in August of 2022. That's almost a full year later. Redevelopment Authority filed a declaration of eminent domain in December of 2022. The city's filing for a loan from the Enterprise Zone Fund in the amount of $325,000 to acquire the property. The Redevelopment Authority of Lancaster is filing for the loan. That is about all I have with that. And if there's anybody else here,
I think Director Dels is here and can speak on that.
may want to answer questions, that would be wonderful.
I do have one question for you, Director Dels, as you come up to the podium. Can you speak to the process that the Redevelopment Authority would normally take for the properties it typically sees? Because this is not a typical property that it sees, is that correct?
That's correct. And maybe just to start with the council action, and then I can provide a little more context. Just to piggyback on what Councilor Craig said, this request is from the Redevelopment Authority of the City of Lancaster to city government. So essentially, the RACL, the Redevelopment Authority, is requesting a loan of $325,000. And that is for the carrying costs and acquisition of this particular property at 502 to 506 West Walnut Street. I do think that the way you characterize it, President Beke, is correct. This is a unique situation. This property has been under inspection for quite some time. It has been vacant since at least 2009. It's accumulated more than 22 citations and nearly $250,000 in related fines. I think it's important to note that anytime there is a property that's been condemned, the last resort for the city is to work with the Redevelopment Authority to take that property. There are many, many steps along the way and a long process to offer opportunities to rehabilitate that property with the property owner. As part of that process, which is governed by state law, it first goes to any property that has been condemned can move first to the Property Reinvestment Board. Then, once it is designated as a blighted property. That designation is affirmed through the City Planning Commission, and then finally it moves to the Redevelopment Authority of the City of Lancaster. Even at that stage, at times, properties sometimes enter a rehabilitation agreement. In this case, there was a rehabilitation agreement that was offered by the property owner. Unfortunately, that rehabilitation plan did not address the blighting influences on the property, and so it was not accepted. And that brings us to where we are today, which is a rare instance, but the Redevelopment Authority has filed the declaration of taking with the Court of Common Pleas. And in fact, we passed the period of time for preliminary objections from the property owner, and we have made an offer on the property just compensation at the appraisal value. So that's where we stand today. And because of the size and importance of the property and the value of the property, it's necessary that the Redevelopment Authority is requesting a loan from the city to cover that acquisition cost.
Thank you, Director Delfs. Comments from council?
Council President?
Councilor Walsh?
A few questions. I think the first one is who controls the enterprise zone loan funds?
That is city government. That the administration made the recommendation to council that that was the most appropriate fund to use for the loan fund. That we talked about this a little bit at the committee meeting last week. Essentially, that loan fund has been existent for many, many years. It was originally used for capital or physical improvements to businesses within the city of Lancaster. All of those loans, all of those original loan funds had been issued and then recycled back to the city. So we have more flexibility with that fund now to use for other kinds of loan purposes if we so desire.
Great. Second of three questions, how do folks access that fund?
At this time, we have not, we've utilized it for different purposes as needed. So one of the other most recent uses for that loan fund has been for the sidewalk loan fund that came before council just recently. So we're applying it on an as-needed basis.
So it's not open to the public to reach out for any sort of projects or anything like that?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. And then my last question is terms for these loans. So while I understand for this particular project, you're hoping that it's a quick turnaround, maybe a few months before you find a buyer or something like that. But what about longer-term projects? What are the terms of the loan from the enterprise fund?
That's a great question. We have flexibility with the loan fund at this time, so we can assign the term according to the need.
Do you know what the specific term is for this loan?
I don't just yet, no. But you're right. The intent is to have that loan in place so long as the Redevelopment Authority needs it. But the idea is that we offer that property through an open request for proposals to solicit development proposals, and ultimately, once that property is sold for a particular set of purposes, then that loan money would come back to the city.
And I lied to you. I have one last question.
Sure.
That RFP will be coming from the Redevelopment Authority, not the Land Bank Authority.
From the Redevelopment Authority, that's correct.
Great. That's everything. Thank you.
Mayor Sirachi?
I do just want to add that I think it was an important point that was made during our committee meetings that we are not required to accept the highest bid for, the Redevelopment Authority is not required to accept the highest bid. And so there may be a community benefit to which the Redevelopment Authority and the administration decide that that benefit is worth a reduced amount of money. So for example, if there were housing that was going to be incorporated into that project and they wanted to have some level of affordability that they were going to guarantee for a similar period of time as like 20 years, then we may accept lower payment in return. And so while the loan fund is a loan fund, there have been situations in the past where we have created loans for the purchase of properties that are patient capital that can be paid back, and those loan funds can then be recycled back into additional purchase of other properties or the sidewalk repair fund. And quite honestly, one of the reasons why we haven't been advertising this is that we actually don't have the internal staffing capacity to be closing loan documents. We have some capacity, and we are also exploring how to increase that capacity, which is for another topic around a critical repair program expansion. But that's just to say that the process of making loans, closing loans, is not something that we have a great deal of internal capacity to do.
Council President,
Council Diaz.
what is the percentage that the city will be getting back from the loan?
At this point, it's undetermined, and that's related to the comments that the mayor just made. It's possible that we would get all of the funds back for the sale of the property, but if it's determined in partnership between the city administration and the redevelopment authority that we're achieving other community benefits, it is possible that we could accept a lesser repayment amount of that loan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President, if I may.
Councilor Ahmed.
You answered my first question in regards to moving past the point of preliminary injunction. Given that that point has passed, are the legal fees, could they be reduced in the $325,000?
Oh, thank you. That's a good question. The appraised value of the property is $315,000. The $10,000 is actually related to general operating costs and legal fees related with the administration of the redevelopment authority. So it's not legal fees related to the court case. It's related to the redevelopment authority administration.
Okay, thank you. And since we've moved that point, past that point of preliminary injunction, we don't presume there will be other legal fees that will be added?
To my knowledge, at this time, no. But I can definitely keep you apprised if we learn anything new from the redevelopment authority.
Councilor Calixte.
Thank you, Madam President. Are there any restrictions or limits on how the loan can be used?
The purpose of the loan is specifically for the primarily for the acquisition, and then there will be some carrying costs, maintenance costs as well, while the redevelopment authority has possession, has control over the property. And I think that's all I have to say about that.
So there's no restrictions.
Well, there will be a loan. There will be a loan agreement. Sorry, that's why I paused. There will be a loan agreement with RACL that will lay out the purpose. But in answer to your question, it will really be focused on the acquisition primarily.
And are there any risks associated with the loan? Any concerns?
Could you expand on your question a little more?
Are there any risks or concerns associated with the loan? For example, when you get the loan, so do you think that you may have some risk, when you use the money?
In terms of the redevelopment authority paying the city back?
Yeah.
I don't have concerns about that because of our longstanding relationship with the redevelopment authority. I think there are questions about the ultimate use of the property and then how much exactly comes back to the city.
And how will the loan benefit the community or the local economy?
The purpose of the loan is to ensure that this property is put back into productive use.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Calixte. I do have an additional question, and I think that maybe Director Hopkins answered this during the committee meeting, but it might be important to hear. What is the current balance of the enterprise loan fund? And also want to make sure that I'm correct in saying that there are currently funds going into that loan fund because it is revolving. Is that correct?
So, as of when the resolution was drafted, the fund balance of that enterprise zone loan fund was about $2.5 million. I just looked up as we were sitting here what the repayments that came in 2020 2022, principal and interest payments total about $480,000 just coming in 2022.
Thank you for that context. I appreciate it.
Council President, if I may.
Counselor Walsh?
One point that it just might be helpful to understand the transaction is, what is your relationship with the redevelopment authority?
Sure. Last week, Emma Hum, who is a senior planner within the department, she also serves as the executive director for RACL, so essentially the staff liaison for that independent authority. So she gave a more extensive presentation last week, and Emma falls within our department, Community Planning and Economic Development.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, we'll take comments from the public on the resolution. Good evening.
Are we paying? What happened? We're getting this loan to pay the owner, correct? We're buying it from the owner?
The loan would be to pay the redevelopment authority of the city of Lancaster to pay the owner the assessed value of the property through the eminent domain process.
Fine, but through that, our cost of giving tickets or citations, what is the amount that we deduct from that? Or do we just forget it? If you're giving this owner that hasn't followed your instructions for whatever reason, okay? You're giving him money for the property, what he owes the city, are we gonna recoup? Is that the correct word? Are we gonna recoup some money? Or are we just erasing it altogether?
Director Dels, do you know if any of the fines and fees have been paid over the years on this property?
So I think I can comment to that, which is that Pennsylvania law does not allow for the reduction of fees that may be owed to a municipality to deduct them from the assessed value when a property is being taken. And so by law, that is not an option.
So basically, we're saying we're erasing that. Let's say he owes us $25,000, $2,000, $18,000, $125,000. By law, do you know where that law is so I can look it up?
So I'm certain that our solicitor can provide you that background, or the external counsel really to RACL would be
Do I have
better.
to write one of those right to know, or?
I can follow up with you, Mr.
No,
Acosta.
because I think we're talking that we're raising taxes on us, and my concern is that these people, we're gonna give them money, he owes us time, and we're talking about charging people for the time of our staff, and we're saying we can't get anything back. And I understand for domain, but, I want to look at, maybe we can do something, because I'm sure we're not the only city that's getting socked with this.
And I'm sure this is not the only property that we have spent many, many years trying to untangle and to motivate owners to take action to care for their property in ways that are in keeping with the neighborhood. And so we deal with this on an ongoing basis, and you're absolutely right. It is a huge time suck. This has been a process that we've been working on for this particular property for more than a decade.
Just a question to that before my minutes are up. Is this person local? Or, is the owner local at all? I mean local, is he in Pennsylvania?
I think you're looking at Mr. Delfs, and I'm not sure that he's going to be able to answer this question.
No, because he's the one that brought this stuff. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
That if he's doing the research, he should be knowing what's going on.
Well, he wouldn't know that because we are only communicating with his lawyer. And his lawyer, this gentleman's lawyer is based in Philadelphia.
Okay. No, I'm just wondering, because we see ourselves hitting our heads all the time, and we're coming to the same circle on the circle, and this is costing us, you say, money. And I'm concerned now that my taxes went up, every penny counts. So
Well, the
I
good
think
news is that this-
my suggestion to you as mayor, that we find out that if they can get me the law, because if maybe we can advocate as citizens that that we can change this law, because we're coming every time, that maybe next year if you have to raise the taxes, they won't be that high. Thank you.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Just had
Ms.
one
Byrd.
Darlene Bird. Just have one question about, you said you transferred money into the sidewalk repair. Can you tell us what that is about?
I can address that question. Last year, a council approved the creation of a sidewalk and curb repair program, which allowed us to offer residents either free or low-cost sidewalk and curb replacement when their streets were going to be repaved. Because when that happened, they'd be required to bring those curbs and sidewalks up to, up to a usable condition. And so, because obviously that's really cost prohibitive for a lot of people, this was a service to those people that were required to make those changes. And it was, the low costs were loans, and so that's a revolving fund.
So and nobody got a grant then for their sidewalk repairs?
Some of them were. Some of them were grant-based, some of them were low-cost, and in some cases, we were just able to kind of bundle them together to work with a contractor to get the best price for them.
Right.
And
And
I
I
think
guess
that
my
was-
concern.
Oh,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Ms. Bird. I think that we put in an initial $600,000 with additional funds going in as the loan fund gets going to facilitate that moving forward.
Thank you for that context.
Yeah, and I guess my concern was that so enterprise zone loan funds could have been transferred to a grant process of some sort, whether it was sidewalk repair or something else, and that we currently have $2.5 million in that loan. Is that correct?
That's what Director Hopkins said, yes.
Okay, so, but we do have taken money from the loan fund and transferred it for grant purposes for projects. So that could have been moved to any department, I'm assuming, not just sidewalk repair, as long as council would have approved it?
That's administrative. At this point, the loan fund is within the administration.
Understandable, but council had to approve it by resolution that money could go into the sidewalk repair.
To create that program, yes.
To create that program. So council could also have a resolution to have these funds go into any other pocket or any other department or any other program, so that if they wanted to.
Thank you very much.
Jessica Lopez, 437 East Marion
Good
Street.
evening.
I'm curious about this property. Which property in particular are we speaking on for this enterprise loan fund?
It is 502 to 506 West Walnut Street. It sits at the corner of Walnut and Pine? Mary.
And he said to bring it back to its original functionality. What was that?
That's a good question. What's the history on that property beyond the blight?
It was a school, and then it was a appliance repair, and they sold appliances and did appliance repair there. The building has been vacant, as mentioned, for more than a decade, and there are still many questions to be answered about the future use of the building that has not been decided.
So it's a sizable building?
It is a large 3-story building.
I'm going to have you come back to the podium only because, Ms. Lopez, if you want to come back to the podium and just restate that. Yes.
So it's a sizable building that could be easily converted into low-income housing.
Correct.
And we're in a moment where our redevelopment authority isn't offering our homeless any options right now. And where we just had a situation where, what was it, how many spaces ended up going to people outside the county for our, our Section 8 vouchers and our low-income housing vouchers? So wouldn't it make more sense that we put into this situation that it has to be turned into low-income housing? And not just up for grabs for whatever and whatever bid? Like, there should be a written clause that this building that was a damper on our city for however long and took from us and we can't take back from, where we're paying out for, should be for the people in this city that reside currently in this city, not future residents, not people we're trying to recruit here, but the people here who have housing issues. That building would be perfect for that. It'd be the same type of building as we have on Prince and Seymour.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. I will say that this process would allow us to, it would allow the redevelopment authority to not take the highest bid which means that if there's a community benefit, as the mayor said before, one of those would be affordable housing, shelter, whatever that could be, they could do that and not have to worry about taking the highest bid from a developer.
But as city council, isn't there a way that you can put in, like in the clause, that the redevelopment authority doesn't have a choice?
The loan isn't even written yet.
I know, but this is where we draft the regulations. This is where you get the community feedback. So it's like, I get the loan isn't written yet, but when you go to write it, it should be a hard no or a hard regulation that this building gets utilized for that. We got overpassed on a lot of different buildings that got tore down and turned into luxury condos. So it's like, we should be putting in concrete stone that, no, this building right here won't go for anything else. If it's not being turned back into a school, then it shouldn't be used for any other purposes except for low-income housing.
Thank you very much. Director Dels, do you have a response?
Yes, and I appreciate the questions. Just a couple of process clarifications. The Planning Commission, as part of this state process, provides a recommendation of use. The Planning Commission specifically left flexibility because I think there is not clarity on what types of development proposals that we will receive and types of development proposals that are economically feasible. So the Planning Commission recommendation is residential, commercial, or mixed use as generally consistent with city zoning ordinance, high consideration to an education use or daycare facility. So that was the language that the Planning Commission provided. You make very good points about the size of the property and the potential community impact. It is a large property. That's why it's a very unique situation that we're planning to provide a loan for the acquisition. It's 8,175 square feet. It's on 0.23 acres of land. One thing that I would like to note is that we have had, since 2019, we have had an affordability policy in place with the redevelopment authority. That was something that was recommended by our department and by the city administration. That is for single-family homes. Most of the work we've been doing with RACO over the last 3 years have been on smaller properties, and those have had an affordability restriction tied to the redevelopment of those properties. In this case, I think it is very possible that there could be an affordable housing component, but I think it is premature to determine that because we don't understand yet the economics of the redevelopment proposals. But very much take your point, and I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Director Dels.
And can I ask, is the tax abatement law of 2008 still in place for our businesses around here?
Would that be referring to LRTA?
I don't know what the technical name is. I just know that there's, I was taught that there was some tax abatement law put in place to where our city businesses don't pay taxes back to the city. Where the county gets taxes, where the state gets taxes, the businesses in the city don't really pay taxes back to the city. So if I'm wrong, correct me on the law or whatever is in place there, but I was told that there was a tax abatement law in 2008 put in place where our businesses don't pay taxes back to our city. So when you speak on a building of this size and say that it might be available for commercial use, it kind of still worries me that that building would end up going to a commercial use, which wouldn't end up paying us back money in that sense.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. I will allow Director Dels to address that question if you have an answer. There's a couple of different tax abatement programs that wouldn't fully exonerate a business from not paying their taxes to the city, but I'm not sure if there's anything else that you have to add.
I think that
Or the mayor.
Ms. Lopez, you're referring to LRTA.
That's what I'm thinking.
And LRTA is a tax abatement schedule that is available to any residential or commercial property owner doing any kind of improvement on their property. It is a graduated schedule, so you are always paying the current assessed value. And then there's a graduated schedule for any improvements that you make. So let's say you have a property and its assessed value is $150,000, and then you put some monies into that property for residential or a commercial purpose. There's a schedule then that you pay the difference in assessed value over a period of years, but it is not zero for more than 1 year.
Ms. Baker, is there a way you can email that to me?
Yeah, I can certainly.
It's also available on our website.
Yeah. I can link you to that.
I'll
That's
be
fine.
honest. I don't know about a lot of other people, but I have a hard time finding stuff on the city websites. Like, there's so many different connections, and it's so many different places you have to look.
It's
that
no problem. I can send you the link to that when I
Thank
send
you
you the
so
other
much.
information. Thank you. Are there any other public comments on the resolution? Mr. Stoldreyer.
Tim Stuhldreher, One United Lancaster. Would just like some clarification on the fines and citations connected with the property. Understand they can't be deducted from the sale price, but is the city going to write it off, or is there some form of recourse?
So those fines are not payable to the city of Lancaster. They are through the MDJ, and those fines are levied by a magisterial district justice. Those fines are paid to an entity that is not the city of Lancaster. And I don't know if Mr. Hopkins, you want to elaborate on that more, but there are outstanding fines. I do not know what that total is. And also, quite frankly, at this point, we've been down such a long road with this property that the fines, we thought at the time when there were very significant fines that were levied against this property owner, that would mobilize this property owner to effectuate change related to this blighted building, and that didn't even work. And so I'll just leave it at that. And Mr. Hopkins, if you want to add anything further.
The process flow is the city issues the citations, take those to the magisterial district judge court. In this case, I'm pretty sure they all went through Judge Ross' court. There were fines issued. The fines that get paid, as the mayor said, go back through that MDJ's court payment process. Ultimately, funds that get paid through fines, if they came from a city code officer, they do ultimately come back to the city, but we have no control over the collection of process for the fines.
Thank you, Director Hopkins. Ms. Lopez, I'll give you just a moment. You have hit your 3 minutes, but if you have one more question?
I do. I want to know what makes this man so privileged that he gets a pass on his fines and doesn't go to jail for $40 a day like everybody else in this city.
It's a great question.
Talk to the ladies in the back row. They'll tell you all about it.
Because I'm like, and you're stating that it's coming out of District Justice Ross' office, a man who hands out $1 million bails like it's nothing. What makes this man so privileged that he gets to hide behind a lawyer in Philly and leave this building here stacking up thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in fines, but never gets a trip to 625 like the rest of the city? So we're going to find him to give him a check, but not find him to lock him up. Yeah, that's pretty much just a statement. I know there's nothing you guys can say, but it's like, let's be real here. Like, the discussion that we're having about this man over here somewhere to the left who's breaking all the laws and hiding behind his lawyer with his nice little white pockets. We're going to be real because we know what it is, but it's like, how do we get them to stop doing it if you're going to lock up little old me for my fines and costs, but not lock up this big old man over here to the left? You're not setting a standard. And with him, it should be a standard if it's been over a decade.
You raise a great point, Ms. Lopez, about how the money gets dispersed to this person. And that is a question that I will raise with our solicitor. Thank you.
Because I think we should be waiting with sheriffs and the check. He can have commissary money, but he should be going to jail.
Thank you very much. Good evening. If you could begin with your name.
Good evening.
Thank
I promise not to take more than 3 minutes.
If you could begin with
my
your name.
name is Susie
thank you.
Gomez, and I am the owner on 811 East Orange Street. I've been an owner for 24 years, and I've actually used the redevelopment authority on a project. So I just want to get clarification. Okay, so when I use the redevelopment authority to do my windows, for example, I learned about it 15 years later that these funds were available to us in the city homeowners, but I never heard about it. So when I saw that these funds were available to city homeowners, I took advantage of it, and then I started spreading the word, but if I didn't spread the word, nobody knows about it. So is the redevelopment authority able to fund homeowner projects in the city such as windows at any point, Ms. Mayor Sirachi?
So I'm just a little confused about funds from the redevelopment authority for the replacement of windows. That
Or
sounds.
any type of redevelopment that the city homeowners are entitled to? Is there any funding that city homeowners are entitled to that is provided by the redevelopment authority?
So the redevelopment authority is not involved in our critical repair program or our lead remediation program. The redevelopment authority is involved in the kinds of things that we're talking about tonight, in which there's a blighted property, in which the person or persons that own that building are not able to take care of it or address the blight, and then it comes back to the city, and then we sell that property with a rehabilitation plan to make sure that that property does not sit blighted and empty any longer. That process can be very complicated, as you're hearing tonight. It can also be complicated because of tangled titles and a whole bunch of other stuff. For owner-occupied properties, which is what I think you're referring to, we have a critical repair program that we are in the process of expanding, and we also have the, through HUD, lead abatement program that does provide homeowners who meet certain qualifications, replacement windows, replacement doors, painting, and things like that to remediate lead. Those are two very different things.
Was at any point in time, were they together at one point? Because I thought the redevelopment authority was a part of the abatement program or the lead base and all that.
No. But I think that the program that you're referring to that helped to replace your windows was probably our critical repair program, and that does still exist. And we utilize community development block grant funds for that program, and in large measure, it is oversubscribed, and we're in the process of working on how to expand that program to make more investments in properties that are owner occupied.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I did my windows though. Yeah, no, what I'm getting at is I thought that they were, redevelopment authority was the one, because I remember when I signed my loan documentations, they are on my paperwork. It says redevelopment authority, even though it was 15 years ago. I'm just questioning it because I thought that those funds were,
Director Dels, do you have anything to add to this question? We can kind of untangle this. I know it's not directly related to the resolution.
Just very briefly, I'm happy to do a little bit of research and see if there was any type of loan program in the past or grant program through the Redevelopment Authority. I don't think that was the case, as the mayor said, but I'm happy to do that research. If it was 15 years ago, I may just not be aware of it. Just very briefly wanted to note that the types of programs that you mentioned tend to operate through the city government, through the city administration. The Redevelopment Authority of the City of Lancaster is a public authority. It's an independent authority. The city does work closely with that authority, but it's sort of a unique or an interesting situation. There are other authorities like the Parking Authority, which has its own staff. The Redevelopment Authority does not have its own staff. So the city has had to figure out ways to help that authority operate with our staff. And that's where I think sometimes there's a little bit of confusion, because the two have to work together closely by necessity, because that authority doesn't have its own staff.
Thank you for that, Mr. Dels.
They don't have enough for you, but the question for Ms. Mayor Sirachi is they don't have enough staff. Is it because people in Lancaster City is not allowed to work for that specific office or program?
No,
Because there's
it's
a lot of
just
people that need jobs here.
I do appreciate that, Ms. Gomez, and it is really a question of the budget and the ability to have as many funds available to support the acquisition costs. And so it's just a function of, it operates very lean.
But isn't the funds there already?
Those funds are earmarked and dedicated to the kinds of things we're talking about tonight. And even tonight, we need to make a loan to the Redevelopment Authority of $325,000 for the acquisition of a building that's been blighted for more than a decade.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Any other comments from Councilor Arroyo?
Thank you, Council President. Just a point of clarification for Director Delphs regarding the enterprise program. That is specifically for loan, it's specifically a loan program, not a grant program, correct?
That mic. Don't touch it. Don't look at it. Don't breathe on it.
The original intent of that enterprise zone loan fund was exclusively for loans. We have, in the last couple of years, explored other opportunities for that fund, but we have used them for other kinds of loans. As we noted earlier, there could be a situation where it's a forgivable loan, for example. There is flexibility with those funds, but historically it has been a loan fund.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Delphs. Hearing and seeing no further comments, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Mann.
Aye.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. We move to Administration Resolution Number 9. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the Dominican Republic flag raising to acknowledge the Independence Day of the Dominican Republic brought forth by the Dominican Association of Lancaster.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. We spoke about this resolution in the Committee of the Whole during our committee meetings. I'll review again. As councilors, you may recall that last year we passed an ordinance that formalized our process to allow flag raisings in public properties. This was as a result of a Supreme Court decision, and this allowed us to have a permitting process for that, allowed us to review the flag that was flown ahead of the flag raisings. The Dominican Independence Day flag raising, and I should note that that time window is 120 days. In this case, the Dominican flag raising, they weren't able to meet that deadline, so we are making this exception to them. If we pass this resolution this evening to allow them to continue to raise their flag, because it is a new ordinance and organizations and groups are still getting a hang of that 120-day window, and you'll see that we also have some other flag raisings on our agenda this evening that do fall within that time window. Take any council comments on the resolution. And comments from the public.
Yep.
Mr. Acosta-Velez.
I was in Washington, D.C., and they had Dominicans on the Hill. If you guys can go there, you'll enjoy it. Very different. I love my Dominican brothers. They were all there. I felt this little. But my question on this proposal is, how do I get to fly my Puerto Rican flag that a lot of Puerto Ricans have been here for years?
I think Director Carrasco is here, and her department actually leads this this process. So if you could just speak to what the process is for organizations.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
And thank you for the comment. So essentially, the process is an online permitting process where you go to the Lancaster Office of Promotion, visit Lancaster's website. There's an application that you submit. The application goes to the city clerk's office as well as to our department. And then we internally develop a process. There's a proposal that's submitted to council and it comes here for council approval.
That sounds cool, but I keep on saying to you guys, and you think I'm going local, I'm not, okay? A lot of people in my community don't have access to internet. Even me that I worked in a school, okay? Still, I go one finger, okay? And all we get is go to the internet. What are you doing as council to afford? Not that, I'm talking about the young Puerto Ricans that went to McCaskey, but I'm talking about the older people. What are we doing for them to make it easier? All we say is go to the internet. Can we look and see if we can think outside the box? And that's for other people too, because I want to flag the all American flag here too. I mean, old people's flag. We got one, okay? So Can you please look at that? And all the time people come here, look in the internet. Well, you know what? I know people that know about computers. I invite in my house and they look in your internet and they can't find stuff for whatever reason. I'm not saying you're not doing the job, but can you think outside the box? Okay? And really, and I'm not going to challenge you. I'm going to say, look into it. Okay? Because all the time you say, go in the internet, we have that. Okay? And I think this is nice because I went and I had a great time. Dominicans on the Hill. We can make Dominicans on the city. That's great. But I mean, can we make it a little bit easier? We're making everything, user friendly. We're making long applications that we have to know when we came here. All this stuff. Okay? I really think just because the Supreme Court orders something, it doesn't mean you have to make it rough for the people that are here. So please look into it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Acosta-Velez.
I just have one follow-up. The application is available in multiple languages, and as well as accessibility, you can come into City Hall and we will assist you with completing your application. It is open to anyone that wants to apply, and we do have a communications plan that's out there communicating about the flag raising process.
Two organizations that have previously flown flags.
And we've called all previous organizations that have flown, had flag raising events here in the city.
Thank you very much for that context. Any other public comments?
Darlene
Ms.
Bird.
Bird.
Yes, I want to know if you are going to post the dates you're doing these flags. We announce it, and this is part of reaching out to the community that council says that they will do, letting people know. I mean, if we're getting ready to pass a resolution, we should say the Dominican flag raising is whatever date it is and time, so that we're spreading this word. We just read the resolution, but I think this is part how council can be reaching out to the community by letting people know when these things are taking place.
I appreciate that, and I will share with you in this particular instance and in the future ones that are coming up. For this particular instance, the flag raising date is February 27th with the backup date for weather of February 28th. Thank you.
Council President, if I may.
Councilor Ahmed.
I appreciate the comments and concerns raised by neighbors, and I do want to vouch personally that I have seen the Department of Neighborhood Engagement very active, tabling events, trying to engage the community, and I myself have also been trying to assist them in that accord as well. So I do see that the work that they're presently doing at community events.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Any other comments on the resolution? Ms. Gomez.
Susie, yes. So when I came here in 92, I witnessed the city have parades with Puerto Rican culture. It was a long parade. It was beautiful. It's like every other parade you would see in Washington or New York or Philadelphia. And for some reason, it stopped. So, I mean, I don't really know the logistics of what happened and why the Puerto Ricans are not able to gain their parade anymore. Maybe you can answer that? It's the cost?
This isn't directly related to the resolution, but maybe, I do think that Millsy would be the appropriate person to answer your question, Ms. Gomez. Would it be okay that you two connect outside of this space?
Yes.
Thank you. Great. Hearing no further comments on the resolution, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Met.
Aye.
Mr. Royal.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese. Aye. Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. We move to resolution number 10, 2023. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster authorizing the mayor and the City of Lancaster to submit an application and business plan for $970,000 to the Commonwealth Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program for the Lancaster City Visitors Center renovation.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. This is through Public Works. Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Council President. I certainly don't want to minimize the conversation that was had in my absence. So Director Campbell, would you be willing to come and summarize what this grant is for? I see that it's for renovating the 230-year-old building of the Welcome Center, and there were certain considerations that were discussed, but I want to make sure you need to add anything.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about this project. This hopefully is a relatively straightforward one. We have been designated by the Commonwealth Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program to receive $970,000 towards the renovation of the Visitor Center. We seek the authorization to actually receive it and to be able to make the applications necessary for the larger redevelopment of the site. We are anticipating that the renovation of the building would be approximately $2.047 million. The balance outside of that $970,000 will be from fundraising. And in fact, $150,000 has already been provided by the High Foundation towards that goal. At this moment, there's not any funding that would be coming from the city towards this particular project. But administratively, we need the authority to be able to make the application, present a business plan, and to be able to actually receive the funds when they arrive.
Thank you for explaining that, because that's quite different from the interpretation that I got. I didn't understand that you were just waiting for, like, the application has been complete. So congratulations. And then just for a point of clarification, within the meeting minutes, it does say the city's contribution will be $150,000. That is not correct?
That is not correct.
Okay.
That was the $150,000 has come from the High Foundation towards the balance, which is there's approximately $1.07 million that we're looking for. The renovation includes things like handicapped accessibility, replacement of historical windows. The building, keeping in mind that the building was built in the late 1990s, I'm sorry, the late 1790s. We want to modernize it for the fulfillment of the visitor center. As you know, it has been renamed the Welcome Center for the City of Lancaster. Create more handicapped accessibility, upgrade technology and digital mapping, and to be able to address the balance of the funds that were required for restoration that insurance for such a historic building did not cover. So we did receive insurance after the fire that we had a little bit more than a year ago at the center. Insurance for a historic restoration building is rarely adequate to address the overall needs.
And one last question that I have, of the remainder that you have to fulfill the 1.5 gap that you have?
1.07, yes.
1.07, okay, thank you. The fundraising, does that, let me put it this way, will the RACL funds disappear if you do not use them or have that match? Or do you think the $970,000, that grant is in hand?
Correct me if I'm wrong. We have to fundraise for the match. Yes, we have to fundraise for the match. I do not know if,
There is a timeline for fundraising, for completing that, but it is quite lengthy, and so we don't have any concerns about being able to do that. So the Redevelopment Authority, we have projects that can take multiple years for us to fundraise for the match.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh. Comments from council?
Council President.
Councilor Ahmed.
Just a quick question for the director. Given the historic nature of this building, it would be required to have these renovations and these preventative maintenance because we wouldn't be able to raise the building or get rid of the building due to it being on a historic register?
So the nature of a building being on the historic registry does not prohibit it from being demolished. However, this is really, it's the original city hall for the city of Lancaster. Historically, it has huge significance. It's at the very heart of the city, and we're looking at adaptive reuse, not full restoration. We do want the exterior of the building to look like, to faithfully look like what it did when it was originally built, and so the cost of doing things like windows and the restoration related to the fire work is a bit more costly than if we were trying to restore windows on a 1970s building or something like that. But the interior of the building, we have a lot of liberty with, and so the technological upgrades, the adaptive reuse, the handicapped accessibility, which is something that the building was not originally, all of those things we can take some design and architectural liberties with those. But I think most of us would like the sense that when you arrive in downtown Lancaster, one of the oldest buildings in the region still has a sense of what one of the oldest buildings in the region looked like.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Comments on the resolution from the public? Mr. Acosta-Velez.
Don't leave, the question's for you. Can we get funds from the state to make it handicap accessible? It might look pretty in that, but the people that are handicapped, and I'm getting there, what are we doing to provide it making handicap accessible? And is there funds in Harrisburg to do that at the same time?
Director Campbell, you mentioned accessibility. Can you expand on this plan?
Yes, so these funds, in fact, go towards handicapped accessibility among a variety of other things. Handicapped accessibility in this context would be, how do you provide access, physical access, and sometimes auditory and tactile access to a physical building? It would be, how do you provide the accessible entry, which would be a ramp or something where if you're in a wheelchair, you can roll directly into the space. Usually that's accomplished by ramp. It can be accomplished mechanically. That's usually more expensive and problematic because if the mechanical lift doesn't operate predictably, suddenly you don't have access. Happily, most of the building is in a place or on a slope where we can, through the design process, find the ways of providing accessibility. One of the things that I focused on when I was an architect, a practicing architect, was handicapped accessibility, largely because my mother was in a wheelchair. And so we did a lot of things to fulfill handicapped accessibility, especially in historic buildings. It's a challenge, but it's not a difficult challenge. It also would allow there is currently an elevator in the building. One would want to make sure that there's access on each floor where the public would have direct access, either by elevator and or by other kind of physical conveyance. The space has not yet been designed, but as a programmatic requirement for handicapped accessibility for the key occupied spaces, I can allow you to be rest assured that it will meet and fulfill all those requirements.
Thank you, Director Campbell.
My question is, okay, before
Mr. Acosta-Velez, I do need you to come to the podium, otherwise you can't be heard on the recording.
The funds that this grant is addressing covers handicapped accessibility.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, so it's covered.
Thank you. Ms. Byrd.
Yeah, I just have two quick comments. Number one is that is the building going to be in use, and is it going to be used by the Welcome Center and the Loop? Because currently we don't have a lot of access. Those offices are not open all the time. So if we're investing this money, have we looked at who's going to be operating this building and at what hours and at what time? And has that cost been included in any budget or anything? Because now you don't have access to that building 7 days a week or 5 days a week, and we're investing a lot of money. So I want to know if that has been thought about. And number two, when we talk about the planning aspects, I think restoring this old building from 1795, and we just put a mosaic of a modern building, 20 stories, right across the street from it. So just when we're thinking about how we are allowing planning to go forth and keeping that vibe that we're trying to keep within the city comes to question.
Thank you, Ms. Byrd. Millsy, do you have an answer for the hours of the Welcome Center? I know this grant doesn't address program or operating costs, just construction, but.
Correct. We have embarked on a tourism master plan, and so we do have an RFP that's out related to programming for the Welcome Center. But related to the hours of operations, this is our slow time during the winter time, and so the foot traffic in the Welcome Center significantly slows down. And so we're able to cut back on staffing to control a little bit of the cost. But as we're developing what the programming is going to be in the future state of the Welcome Center, and as we're going through this master plan, we are expecting to expand hours of operations. We're already in conversations of what those hours of operations are going to be in the spring and continue on. So it is a concern of ours as well. We do want to expand hours and appreciate the comments from Mrs. Bird. So more to come on that.
Any additional comments from the public on the resolution? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Med.
Aye.
Mr. Royo.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. That takes us to resolution number 11, I'm sorry. I'm trying to do your job again. Mr. Harris, resolution 11.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster, excuse me, approving an easement agreement between the City of Lancaster and 347 North Queen Street LLC, granting an easement to 347 NQS for encroachments into the public right-of-way over North Queen Street and East Lemon Street, as more fully set forth in the easement agreement.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. 347 North Queen Street property desires to develop the property known as North Queen Street and Lemon Street as a public right-of-way or streets with a mixed-use development containing multifamily dwelling units, on-site parking limited to residents, and some retail space use on the ground floor of the building. Looking for an easement for certain features of the project, such as foundations, footings, rooftop copings, overhangs at the 7th floor level, and roof canopy over the main entrance on North Queen Street at the 1st floor level. Prior to construction, the improvements of which these easements are granted, detailed plans and specifications must be submitted to the appropriate departments. I believe, is that
Yes.
Director Smith?
We've given you a promotion.
Well,
take it.
Doug, I love you.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. I spoke to this project briefly at the last meeting. I'll provide just a brief recap here, but happy to answer questions. I think Councilor Craig's summary was quite adequate. This is the project of the corner of Lemon and North Queen Street, which is an empty parking lot currently. It's proposed for a 7-story building and 72 units. And in the central business district, we require that buildings are constructed to the lot line, which often means that there are some projections off the face of the building or underneath sometimes the sidewalk, which would be footers to construct the building. This is pretty typical throughout the city. And we try to do our due diligence and require a right-of-way easement for any possible issues, indemnifying ourselves of any, for instance, any harms or anything that might happen. I think all the encroachments were mentioned in Councilor Craig's description. So if you have any questions, happy to help.
Douglas, you had mentioned, and I think this is an important point, what's the width of the sidewalk in front of this building?
It's about 11 feet, and the main canopy extends from the face of the building about 6 feet, I think, at maximum. So, and that is still, there's quite a distance overhead.
And that's over the entrance.
That's right, and that's the largest of the projections.
Thank you. Any other council comments? Comments from the public on the resolution?
My name is Ivan Acosta Velez, 804 Highland Avenue. Have you discussed or just threw it to the curb? There's only 15 parking spaces for 72 apartments. The community needs to know that. There's a restaurant right across the street. When they get busy, there's stores right along, and they're in the did. So are we looking at where 72 apartments, 15 parking spaces, and you have to leave a parking space for the manager of the property?
I appreciate your question, Mr. Costa-Velez. Douglas, correct me if I'm wrong, the parking, there is parking within, is it a 1 block or a 2 block radius of the building? Parking authority parking, is that correct?
Yes, Counselor, there is a parking garage, basically catty corner to the project that residents would be permitted to rent at. There are some parking spaces, as Mr. Acosta said, being provided at ground level underneath the building as well. And then, of course, in this zoning district, as you know, there's no parking requirement for the development.
Thank you. Any other comments on the resolution? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Mann.
Aye.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Beke.
Aye. Okay. That takes us to Administrative Resolution Number 12. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the Juneteenth flag raising to acknowledge the emancipation of African Americans brought forth by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. As with our last flag raising resolution, this approves the flag raising. In this case, the date for the Juneteenth flag raising is, amazingly enough, June 19th, with a backup date in case of weather on June 20th. Again, this falls within that 120-day window that was set in ordinance last year, and this allows that flag raising tradition to continue. Take any other council comments on the resolution? Comments from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Mann.
Aye.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
President Beke.
Aye. All right, that moves us to Administration Resolution Number 13. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving revised rules and regulations of the Civil Service Board for the examination and appointment of applicants in the Bureau of Fire for the City of Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This is Public Safety, Councilor Diaz.
Publicly, they had a meeting on January 27, 2023, where the Civil Service Board of Lancaster City wanted to change the regulations and rules of the examination and appointments for the Bureau of the Fire Department. According to the chief, I figured I'll go ahead and throw it. If anybody has any questions, you can come up. But basically, he is interested, or the board was interested in having the test done through, I would say, a Zoom app or some type of, computer app. And obviously, somebody will be monitoring the examinations while the the fire applicants would be taking those tests. If there's any questions, the chief is here to answer them. But that's basically what the resolution is about.
Thank you very much, Councilor Diaz. Any council comments on the resolution?
Council President,
Councilor Walsh.
just as a point of clarification, this allows you to conduct these civil service exams virtually? Is that what this does?
That's correct.
Remotely.
It'll allow you, we'll set a application date and we'll say March 1st is the application date. Then you'll set a second date of when the test needs to be taken. So it'll give applicants a larger time frame when they can take the test, instead of saying your application is due March 1st and the test is March 5th. If we say March 1st, the application's due, and we can say March 31st, your test needs to be taken, and it's done by a national testing center where they monitor everything, and then they score, and we see the results of the test. It's the same test that's been given. It's just that it's being offered online now for easier access for everybody that needs to take the test.
That's great. Thank you.
And Chief, this kind of system is already in place for police officers,
That's
civil
correct.
service tests, right? So
And
this
we're-
allows our fire bureau to do the same.
And they've had great success with it, and that's why we're following suit.
Great, thank you. Comments from the public on the resolution? Ms. Lopez?
So when we say this is also the hiring process for our police department, in regards to drawing it back to the firefighters, wouldn't you feel more comfortable meeting them in person during the application process instead of funneling through these are the people who are out to protect our city. And don't get it wrong, I do believe that there should be an extended time frame. Y'all shouldn't be crunching it into 4 days like you said. But I kind of feel like it's passing the buck off for not just you guys, but our police department our police officers to be taking civil service exams online and not actually meeting these people in the process before they get past this part. There's things that you catch in person that somebody 100 miles away can't decipher what's good for our community. When you sit down with these people, you get a vibe of people. When you talk to people, but we're channeling this to other people outside of our community to determine who's the right employees for us.
Chief, can you speak to where this test falls in the hiring process?
No, this is the first step of the hiring process. You'll do the online testing, and then they'll have to complete a physical agility, which is held at the Lancaster County Public Training Safety Center. And then after that, then they meet with the myself. Usually it's a civil service representative, and then human resources. And that's where we do the oral interviews. And then after that, you get scored on how you fall on the hiring list, which is all following federal government guidelines.
Yeah, I know a few people who sit in on these things, and
Yep.
it's like, yeah, that was just good. When we say we're channeling this,
Yep.
Point, appreciate it, thank you. Further comments on the resolution? Hearing none, Mr. Harris?
Mr. Ahmed?
Aye.
Mr. Royal?
Aye.
Mr. Cleese?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Ms. Walsh?
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. And then there was one. Administration Resolution Number 14, Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving a pride flag raising to acknowledge the start of Pride Month as brought forward by the Lancaster Pride Association.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Like our previous flag-raising resolutions, this falls within that 120-day window. We are approving this flag-raising, the date to be held on June 1st of 2023 with an inclement weather date of June 2nd, 2023. Any council comments on the resolution? Comments from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed?
Aye.
Mr. Royal?
Aye.
Mr. Cleese?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Ms. Walsh?
Aye.
President Baker.
Aye. Right, that concludes our legislative agenda this evening. We now move into our second public comment period, open for comment on issues that were not previously on the agenda this evening. Durations of the comments is limited to no longer than 3 minutes. Please begin with your name and your block of residence. Ms. Byrd.
Darlene Bird, 200 block of South End Street. And I don't know if it's because the mayor did talk about the $12 million that we got, if that's considered something that was on the.
It was not on our legislative agenda.
So
please.
I want to know that there was a plan drafted to get this grant. So is council aware of where this Vision Zero is going to take place and where this $12 million are going to be spent? Or did we just approve of this grant not knowing where it's going to be used in the city?
I can say that we approved the Vision Zero plan in 2022 with the intent to do the public outreach about identifying dangerous intersections, doing traffic studies, which have already started and are happening now, and we'll continue that engagement to continue to identify where those issues are to utilize those funds.
Okay, so before it's spent, there will be a plan presented, we're spending this money here, or where it's going to be spent at?
Yeah, and we will get periodic updates on the Vision Zero plan. I think there's actually one coming up at a committee meeting or a council meeting. I can't remember. Coming up in one of our upcoming meetings where we're going to get an update for 2023.
Because I attended a lot of them that was in the southeast area, and they really were addressing Church Street and not necessarily the southeast area, but around, like Broad and Dolphin, not really into the residential areas that are of concern for safety and Vision Zero. I did bring those concerns up at the meetings that I attended, and I just want to make sure that they're going to be addressed. And then my other question I want to ask has to do something with the home rule, since I am definitely going to run for a commissioner. I just wanted to see if council knows that would the DID and the authorities, would they be affected in home rule? The unions? Because if we're changing our whole aspect of government, and I'm just getting clarity so that I know, how would that affect the authorities, the redevelopment authority? That is all legally orchestrated by the administration for setup, the parking authority, the unions. Will any of that be affected? Does council know?
I guess my answer would be, it's up to the commission if they would be elected and if the question is answered.
Change all of those things.
They could choose to put that level of detail in a charter. But if you're speaking of like the tax impacts to DID, or no?
No.
Okay.
Just the structure, how it would be affected.
That's my assumption. I'm just taking a guess, though.
There are parameters that the DCD went into just very briefly about the things that are still subject to law. And one of those that was listed, I believe, on that presentation that you can find online is authorities. And so I
didn't
don't
see that.
believe that there are changes that can be made to independent authorities because Pennsylvania state law preempts that. But this is also a great
Part of that.
question,
Yeah,
Darlene,
okay.
because if you're running for study commission and others,
We
these
will
are the
find
questions that needed to be asked and answered publicly. And that process cannot begin unless we are encouraging everyone to vote yes on May 16th to even establish the Home Rule Study Commission.
All right.
Good point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Byrd. Mr. Acosta-Velez.
Hola, my name is Ivan Acosta Velez. I'm here, I'm the same problem. $25,000 that you did of work in my home. The questions that you asked me to give you, those papers are in my file.
They're where, I'm sorry?
In the file. In the
Okay.
file, you asked me for, if I contacted, I did, and I contacted the city with the problems that were in my home, okay? The issues, the damage to the floor, the damage to stuff that they're supposed to got money, and the change that they made to cover my things, property that was damaged, that was in there too. Now, I got from the city that we're not doing business with this person, from the right to know, and that made me feel good. But I really would like that you look into it, because you sit here and you have programs and there's never hearings on how good this program is, and some of you in council say, oh, they're great. You know, oh, they're doing a great job. So I think you should have hearings to find out how great of a job is being done. Okay? Because you have the right to have hearings as a council. So I'm going to keep on coming back until they resolve my problem with the floor, and all the stuff that you asked me is in that file. Okay? So can you look and
So to your specific questions, if I may, in this, I mean, we
I
can
just
do
want,
this
I
off, we
just
can do this
want my
personally or
stuff
not.
that we can all go to McDonald's, that it could please be fixed. Okay?
Just briefly, the two questions that I had asked, and I don't have access to
No, yeah,
this
those
file.
two questions, the
Yeah.
files in there, the records, they were contacted.
Right.
The
The
gentleman
two-
was contacted. I wrote a letter to the city on the issues that were happening.
The two questions that you mentioned, the questions I had for you were differences in two things.
Mhm.
One, who was responsible for removing belongings so that work could be done? And two, who you were told to contact, the city or the contractor directly? Which you
told
told me
me,
a different thing
okay.
that I saw in your file.
Okay.
So you were going to supply me the
Yeah,
things
but those
that-
two things are in there, because I have copies of the file and they're in there.
If I could see those copies, because the information that I was supplied from the file did not say those things.
Okay, and also, but the contract that we signed with the city, that I signed with them in the city, they never went to, I don't know what the word is, where you go and get a in-between party to, that has never been done.
Okay.
What's the word?
Arbitration.
Thank you very much. That has not done.
Okay.
That was never done.
Let's start with those two questions, because the
No,
items
those
that
two
I,
things are there.
those are
I
the
will
two
get them
things.
to you.
If you
I will
could.
give them to your,
that's where, start with that.
what's his name?
Mr. Harris, Bernie
Mr. Harris, I will get
The
them to
MVP
him.
of the night.
But those
Okay.
are the two things. But my concern on all this is how many other people that are scared to come to talk to you, and I'm not scared of any of you, okay? There's other people that are going through that. People that up in St. Joseph, without giving you the street, they had problems with the windows. Another lady had problems, so it's not only Ivan Acosta problem. The only thing with Ivan Acosta will let you know. Okay? So we need to look into that program. And you should look about having hearings on it. You have that right. Okay? Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Ms. Lopez?
Jessica Lopez, 437 East Marion Street, and as always, I'm kind of going to break the rules real quick. I know this is a point to speak about things that are off the agenda, but when I came in a few minutes late, and I kind of missed the first situation that was transpiring. And don't get it wrong, I applaud the city for wanting to honor resistors in this month and speak on, the history of the city in regards to protest. And my lawyer's probably going to kick me for making a statement on this one, but I'm asking how we're honoring the resistors in the last situation at the very, very bottom when it speaks on the loud protest of 2020 when we're in the middle of sentencing trials and sad to say, but none of our city council advocates for us. So it's just curious to me and to the other people who are actually in this situation going through this court process and fighting for our lives in regards to certain things where we were stated as, most of us, peaceful protesters, but our presence was enough to encourage a riot, where we're being advocated for or honored in any way. I know this was something that was proposed not just with City Council, the NAACP had part in it, and we have statues that are going up, we do have events that are going on, but it's not speaking on the protest history, and nobody's advocating for us, but honoring the work. So I'm kind of confused on what the resolution actually is and what it does.
So the function of the resolution was a proclamation recognizing Black History Month.
And understandable, that's something that's always been recognized. That's something that we don't need repeated. We do recognize so many protest resistors over the years, whether our city does or doesn't. But at the same time, with the inclusion of a protest in which people are in the process of being prosecuted for and not spoken about, it seems like we're kind of leaving pieces out on that one when we're documenting our history. And it's like, why do we get to pick and choose what we include in that? Don't get it wrong, the resolution would be something that's great if it really was something that we're doing, but do we really honor resistors in this city?
I really don't think excuse me, I'm sorry.
Counselor
I
Craig?
really don't think the resolution speaks to honoring.
But
I don't really think it speaks to honoring anyone. What it is recognition that they did what they did. Now, when you're speaking of incidents that happened.
I only use the word honor because that's the words that were used in the resolution.
Okay. But that would be my translation of that.
What I would say is that the NAACP did help draft this resolution. I was working closely with Blaney Watson to do that. And it was important to include that as part of the history of resistance in the city. And that is within our power to put in there and recognize.
No, and respectfully, don't get it wrong, it should be recognized, but to recognize it in a one-sentence statement of loud protest is not the truth. You kind of sum that up to as if it was some organized loud protest. And it wasn't that. It was a summer of protest. It was the biggest protest in which the Susquehanna Valley saw, or central Pennsylvania, in that type of organized faction when it came to the protests of the summer 2020. And it wasn't just us, don't get it wrong. 18 countries, 50 states, we know the whole pattern, but it's like, at the same time where we're in a unique position to actually advocate and stand for the citizens in this city that are genuinely going through something behind that protest that we respectfully have in our power to mention, but don't respectfully have in our power to actually advocate for. It's just confusing to us that are sitting back going through this process, whether we get recognized as those protesters or we don't, or people overlook certain things or choose to pick over certain things. It doesn't change with the history. And I understand that, Ms. Bakay, but I'm like serious about something right now.
I understand, but everyone got 3, so you've already gone over. Just please finish your thought.
It's just confusing to us, and it's kind of, I don't know, like I don't know. I don't even know the words to exactly put it, but it didn't make me feel good. So it's like, don't get it wrong, maybe it was something that, since we don't really respect and honor those protests and the mannerism in which we should, that maybe we should have respectfully left out. And it's like, yous all have stood in rooms with me in the last couple weeks. Yous all know the things that I'm going through behind this. And it's like, oh yeah, let's slap it on here, but never advocate for myself or 14 to 15 other people who are going through this. And it's like, yeah, it's history because it happened in 2020. But in 2023, it's still going on. So where you have the power to advocate and stand for the people that are going through this, we're choosing not to, but we're making a statement on the bottom of a piece of paper that's going into our history. And I only have 3 minutes, and I'm sorry that I overtook.
I have 5.5 minutes right now, which is more than I've given anyone else tonight.
And I appreciate that.
I will ask if you just
but I
please
will tell
finish your
you
thought.
that I've been holding on to this for over a week to bring it to the proper forum in which to discuss it, and not discuss it in forums in which it didn't belong. So where I've sat next to you for the last week and a half and didn't bring it up in any of those other instances, I waited to speak to you in the proper forum. And it's like, yeah, there's nothing you are going to be able to tell me. And I probably shouldn't have said this. My attorney's probably going to kick me in my ass. But at the same time, like, can we really think about the things that we're doing while these things are transpiring? Because it's not reading the same way I'm guessing you guys wanted it to.
Ms. Lopez, we're at 6.5 minutes, so I'm going to thank you. I do appreciate your feedback and your comments. I do. Thank you. Ms. Gomez, you were slotted for earlier this evening, so if you have public comment to deliver.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I still have to address my name now, right?
Thank you, yes.
I do. Okay.
Can you
Susie
move
Gomez.
the mic closer, because I can't?
You can bend that
Oh,
down.
Susie Gomez.
Thank you.
Okay, I just have a quick question, well, a couple. But For the property taxes, how many times does the property taxes go up a year?
One time, if at all, if it's in part of the city budget.
And when was the last time it was raised?
In the passing of the 2023 budget in December.
Just this December?
Right, and they're charged once per year.
And before that it was raised in 2022 or 2021?
No, before that was what was that?
2019.
19. I was going to say 18. 2019.
And then, do we have any word on the union FFs? I'm sorry, I'm tired. But there was the labor union for the waterworks. Did we have any passing of the?
The contract, is that what
Yeah.
you're discussing?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just out of it right now. I need to go to sleep.
Are there any other
I do
questions before
wanna-
we answer, just because
Yeah,
this
that
is your
one.
time, so I want
That
to make
one
sure
in
you take it.
general.
I'm sorry?
Can you address the union?
I'm not sure where we're at with that. I don't think there's been anything approved at this time, and negotiations are ongoing.
Do we have any conclusion as to when it's going to be brought up again, or how long do we have to wait for that conclusion?
There is not a timeline for the conclusion of negotiations. We are back at the bargaining table, at the negotiation table with AFSCME bargaining members.
Do we have a date of a meeting, or do you have
Yes.
anything? Okay.
The next meeting has been scheduled. And I'm not at that bargaining table. I can't tell you the date, but I can tell council that those meetings are ongoing. There was a meeting last Friday, and there's another meeting that's been scheduled.
Can you tell me when the meeting is scheduled, or is that something that?
No, I cannot tell you that because I don't know, and it would not.
Or where can we find it?
I don't think that's public information, quite honestly. I think I think it doesn't need to not be public information, but I don't have it on my calendar, Ms. Gomez.
Just want you to consider it, that's all. At least having some type of solution, or like how long, how much longer, when can we at least know what's going to happen with that contract? And then,
30 seconds, Ms. Gomez.
sure. I think the last one was, okay, so I had called Jamie Reason from the city, the waters, and I've been asking for a meeting to be held in regards to the issues with the water and the sewer. Do you have any idea as to when we're going to talk about these or have a meeting regarding the water issue in the city of Lancaster?
I don't know what issue you're referring to.
There was a letter that went out.
Oh, related to the fluoridation?
Yeah, and they were supposed to have a meeting in regards to some issues that were raised by the city residents. And I've been contacting Jamie Reason for quite some time, and I have yet to get a response as to when we can address our opinions, or we can, get some type of meeting going on. We just want a meeting. And they did say that they were going to have a meeting. That's why I'm raising this, because now it's week 4, and I have not even gotten a response from Mr. Reason.
Can you say the person's last name for me?
Reason, Jamie Reason, or James Reason.
Reben, Dr. Reben.
Reben,
Okay, James Reben, and our.
I don't know.
That's
Yeah,
okay,
they said that he was supposed to hold a meeting, and he was going to address the city residents when that meeting was going to be held. And this is, like I said, week 4, maybe even week 5, and I have yet to hear a response from him. They said he would call me, no answer.
Okay, I will follow up, ask Director Campbell to follow up with
Yeah.
Dr. Reben to.
Between the director and the mayor, I'm sure we could
Yeah.
figure out. what's
And
going on
Ms.
there.
Gomez, I'm assuming that Mr. Harris has your contact information?
I have it as well.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
And then my last concern was.
Only because we're going over, this is be the last one.
Yeah, this
You've
is the
hit
last
3.5
one.
minutes.
The Reservoir Park has been an issue for like 5 years. I've been speaking or trying to get that park to be redone. Like I said, we've been residents in Orange Street for quite some time. And I brought it to your attention, Deneen, several times in regards to that park being done. And I keep getting, oh, it's going to be done. I know that they painted the wall mural, but other than that, like, it's still not done.
So, thank you.
It's year 5 at this point.
Yes, and we had a pandemic in the middle of all of that, which definitely slowed our roll as it relates to our comprehensive parks plan. So we're in the process of developing that comprehensive parks plan that will be taking into, we're going to be doing a lot of neighborhood engagement. Reservoir Park is on the list in terms of the next round of park renovation, as well as a number of other parks. And I'm sorry that we're slowed. You're correct. We did talk about this, and we are behind as it relates to this. Then the next question is securing the funding that's going to be necessary for the kinds of capital improvements that are going to be needed in Reservoir Park. So yes, there is work that is happening. We are moving forward with planning, and you'll be hearing more about neighborhood engagement related to Reservoir Park. And then also, just because you're in that neighborhood, I just also want to flag that, we're finishing the comprehensive plan this summer, and planning to roll that out. And then the next phase of work is going to be doing some small area planning around the prison site, which is also in your neighborhood and does relate also to Reservoir Park. And so there will be a lot more discussion coming related to that in 2024. And so I just want to flag that for you, that that's on my mind for your neighborhood.
Okay, and I just want to flag to you that you told me that 2 years ago.
Yes,
And we are now on another year. I'm talking 5 years now. My grandbaby should not have to be playing in that park. The swings, the whole set is deteriorating. And I think that it's time that you focus on that park, because there's so many things being redeveloped in this city. There's so many things, infrastructures, and so many things that are not even going in towards low-income families or low-cost housing, that it's beginning to be a nuisance, honestly. So I'm just sharing my opinion with you, because I want you guys to see the passion that these people have in this city. Like my mom and dad, and I'm sorry to take up time, but you guys got to hear this, because my mom worked for the school district all her life. And when she retired, all she wanted to do was buy a house. And she can't even find a house because there's more and more bidders coming into the city, taking over homes that us as Lancasterians should be first bidders on. And it's not fair. It's not fair that we cannot even get a home, that we pay our taxes for 25 years in this city. We built this city. We were a part of this city. You understand? We work with the children. We work with members and boards, and it's community work. Fundraisers, I can't even begin to tell you how many fundraisers, even the police department, I've done for the city. And for me not to be able to buy a second home, or my parents not to be able, because bidders are constantly bidding them out, it's very, very unfair. We as Lancasterians who put our whole hard work and earn money in the city should be at least first on that bid. Thank you, I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. All right. Hearing no further public comment this evening, we move then to the report of the mayor.
Given the late hour, I'm going to make this very brief. We are hosting several home rule neighborhood meetings, and I just want to flag the dates for you. February 21st, and now there's a typo here. Hold on, I'm sorry. The first will be February 21st at Ebenezer Baptist Church, followed by Thursday, the 23rd, at Bethel AME. We also have dates scheduled for February the 27th. That will be at the Lancaster Theological Seminary. And I promise I will email these all out to you so that you have them. And then Wednesday, March 1st, with a location TBD. We may also be adding a fifth one. There will be a presentation, some time for questions and answers, and time for potential commission members to introduce themselves and have an opportunity to get their petition signed. Anyone who is running for commission is welcome to join any and all of these meetings. It is not required, of course. People can get signatures however they can. And Also, I just want to say that with the $12.7 million Safe Streets for All grant that we just, that I mentioned earlier, our city's development team has doubled the grants under management in less than 1 year, taking us to $55.7 million, not including ARPA or HUD funding. And this reflects, and this is a number we're very proud about, 27,500% return on investment in 1 year. And I'm beyond pleased with this outcome and can't wait to see the impact of these grant funds that we will have in the city, because obviously we know that without these grant funds, we wouldn't be able to do nearly the things that we do to continue to keep the city great. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sirachi. That brings us to the report of President of Council. I do not have a report this evening. That brings us to council comments. Are there any council comments this evening?
If I may, President.
Councilor Diaz.
I've had several conversations with some of the unions from AFSCME. They have really gotten upset at the fact that we've had millions of dollars for the administration increases, and they still haven't settled a contract. That's the first thing. The second thing is they also have the Dixon residents that have been over a year trying to get a response from Mrs. Carrasco regarding a trash issue that they've had. And with the amount of money that she received as an increase, it's very disconcerting for them to have to wait a year, and let's say more than a year, and they still haven't received an email regarding this situation. That's all I
Thank you,
have.
Councilor Diaz. My hope is that you will follow up with Director Carrasco directly, if you haven't already, on that issue. Any other council comments this evening? Hearing none, with our agenda concluded, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.